Good day, mighty eagles. This is Judy Malubag, Bachelor of Science in Accountancy, Section 1A. Tasked to report about coping with the challenges of intercultural communication, wherein my purpose is to present to you the communication modes, practices, and styles of Japan. But before we start, let me give you some facts about Japan. Japan is known by their literacy, traditional arts including calligraphy, tea ceremonies, flower arranging, and designs. Also their advanced technology, their legacy of gardening, sculpting, and poetry. One of the most famous sites of Japan is the birth of sushi. Let's now proceed to their cultural communication. First is the way they greet. Use formal titles, especially when addressing someone for the first time. Similarly, never call a Japanese businessman by their first name. Handshake. Most Japanese who live in Australia have adopted the handshake as their primary way of greeting. Bowing. It is used when informally greeting someone or walking past someone of a higher status. The deepest, most polite bow expresses sincerest gratitude or apology. To hold a bow longer than another shows respect or humility. Let's proceed to their etiquette. Basic etiquette of Japan. It is impolite to yawn or chew gum in public. People are expected to bashfully deny compliments. Being too quick or willing to accept compliments can make them seem conceited. It is polite to give a faint refusal or show slight hesitation before accepting an invitation or offering. Such behavior shows modesty. People who are sick are expected to wear face masks for them to prevent the spread of germs in public places. Blowing one's nose in public is considered unhygienic. They commonly sit in the size-style positioning. It is inappropriate for women to cross their legs, and men should only do so by crossing their knees or ankles. This is the proper way they sit, for women and for men. Next is visiting. It is best to call your host before arrival, to give them a warning even if they invited you. Bring a small edible gift, especially when visiting someone's home for the first time. Shoes should be taken off and placed next to door or in allocated area before entering a Japanese home. They place their shoes facing towards the outdoors if they're on the floor. Eating. The Japanese use chopstick to eat their food. Sometimes, a large spoon may be used to sip broth. Miso soup is served with most meals and often replaces the purpose of drinks. When eating at a traditional meal, the bowl is held to the mouth to avoid bending down to reach the table. It is considered inappropriate for adults to eat while walking because street food is often eaten on the spot where it is bought. Gift giving. Pass a gift to the recipient with both hands. They may also receive or give a gift with a slight bow. Food and drink are appropriate gifts for most occasions. Gifts are important in Japan as their quality and choice is reflective of the relationship two people have and respect the giver wishes to show to the recipient. Let's discuss also their do's and don'ts. Do's. Express flattery, especially when it is due as this will give face to the recipient. However, always do so earnestly. The Japanese often smile and nod throughout conversation. Remember that this is done out of politeness to save face and does not necessarily indicate that they fully understand or agree with what you are saying. Make a considered effort to be humble and modest. It is polite to lightheartedly disagree with people when they compliment you. It is good to add a lot of reassurance during conversation. Their don'ts. Avoid being blunt or frank about delicate topics. Sometimes, blatant honesty can be unappreciated. Negative news is delivered more discreetly. Do not raise your voice or lose your temper. Losing control of one's emotions, even if the most frustrating situations, is a sign of a poor upbringing and is likely to make you lose face in Japanese person's eyes. Avoid discussing sensitive historical and political topics such as World War II. Avoid being openly critical or pointing out mistakes. For example, if they have taken you to a restaurant and you do not like a dish served, commenting on its quality may be taken as a comment on their skills as a host, even though they did not prepare the dish. Communication. There are two types of communication in Japan. First, verbal. Indirect communication. The Japanese communication pattern is very indirect and far less verbose than what the English-speaking West is familiar with. They rely less on words to convey context and are more attentive to the posture, expression, and tone of voice of the speaker to draw meaning from a conversation. Refusals. The cultural preoccupation with saving face and being polite means that the Japanese may wish to avoid giving a flat no or negative response even when they don't agree with you. Laughters. When communicating bad news, a Japanese person may smile and laugh to diffuse the uncomfortable situations. Nonverbal communication. Physical contact. Physical contact varies depending on the context in Japan. Eye contact. They avoid eye contact with strangers as it is considered rude to stare. Inhaling. When a Japanese person inhales air through their teeth, it usually implies disagreement. Beckoning. It is done by facing the palm of the hand to the ground and waving one's finger towards oneself. It is impolite to beckon people who you are not close friends with. Body language. Japanese do not gesture very much while speaking as their body language is largely restrained. Nodding. Japanese people often nod to acknowledge what is said. Silence. Pausing before giving a response indicates that someone applied appropriate thought and consideration to the questions. This reflects politeness and respect. Pointing. It is done using entire hand unless referring to oneself, in which case they place their index finger on their nose. Gesture. A Japanese person may clasp their hands together in front of their chest when apologizing or accepting something. Waving. Shaking the hand with the palm of the hand facing forward from side to side means no. Facial expression. It is common for Japanese people to maintain a placid expression and smile during an interaction regardless of the topic. Tipping. Tipping is not common practice in Japan. Restaurant or other service providers will usually have an additional fee set by their establishment built into the bill, and if you give, place the money in an envelope first. Punctuality. It is important to arrive on time. You should be ready to go with whatever is planned at the starting time. If you are late, be sure to make an apology for your tardiness. That's all, my Eagles. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've learned something about the culture of Japan.